I should be able to. All right. So when we talk about hair, the biggest mistake that gets made is goodbye. The biggest mistake that gets made when we make hair is that we know that hair has linear structure, that it's lines, right? Our hair is like long lines. We know that our hair is like individual long pieces. And so the temptation a lot of times is for us to want to draw those lines when we go to shade or draw our hair. This makes for hair that looks like noodles or wire instead of hair, okay? So this is like the worst possible way to try to draw hair. The true trick for drawing hair is that you don't draw the hair, you just shade the shadows that are there, okay? So I know that sounds odd, but you can see that I've started part of my hair over here, and you can see that it clearly looks like hair, but all I've done is shade. Okay, so it's just like any other part of my face. I'm just looking for the highlights and the shadows and the shapes that are there. So remember, we talked about that when we did the drawing, that you wanted to look for the shapes that were in your hair. So up here at the very top of like where my hair parts, there are these unusual, like kind of angled, darker triangles. So that go like this. So I've outlined some of these with my grid. So if you didn't outline some of these odd shapes that you can see in your hair, you'll want to go back and outline those using the grid. So I'm going to start with those little bit of darker spots. This section here is lighter. So you'll notice I'm just shading. I'm not making lines. But what I am doing is making sure that I'm shading in the direction that my hair grows. So you need to watch your portrait, and you have to kind of adjust as you shade so that you're kind of constantly changing the direction of your pencil to match the directional growth of your hair. So here, this is the part in my hair. My hair starts to go this other direction. So I have this series of shadows that go in the other direction that are here, and they kind of butt up against the base of some of those lighter sections that went the other way. And then I'm just gonna shade. So notice, like, instead of shading this direction, I'm now shading in this direction. And again, I'm watching for where it's darker. So there's this section back here that's a little bit darker. Now, the great thing about this method of shading hair is that it works no matter what kind of hair you have. If you have long hair, short hair, curly hair, kinky hair, like there's so many different kinds of hair. If I'm just looking for the highlights and the shadows and shading in the direction of the hair, I'm going to make realistic looking hair no matter what kind of hair I have, all right? So problems come in when I just shade hair like shade hair, right? Like this is never gonna look like hair. Hair does not grow sideways. Like if this was my face, my hair does not go in that direction. Nobody's hair grows in that direction. Everyone's hair comes out of their skull and goes up or out or over, okay? If I have very tightly curly hair, I'm going to want to mimic that tight curl texture by shading in kind of more aggressive circles. So me shading in a little bit more circular pattern is going to leave more texture in the pencil that will mimic very curly hair, okay? So that's kind of you can kind of see that that feels different than the smooth. I have straight hair that's long, so I'm wanting always to shade in the direction. If I have braids, for instance, I want to think about, I have to shade each individual braid one at a time. So braids are about sections of hair that are interlocking and interwoven with each other. So without looking at a braid, I'm just gonna try to guess at some of like what a braid might look like. All right, so I have a braid of hair. Each one of these has a shadow, and not each braid, I mean each section of the braid has a highlight and a shadow. So they each get shaded one at a time as you work your way down the braid itself. Okay, so if you have a lot of braids in your hair, like little cornrows, this can be a time-consuming process, okay? Because there is no shortcut for braids. Each of these hair sections has to be shaded individually, one at a time, so that there's an under with a shadow and an over with a highlight and another shadow at the edge. So you can see that this starts to feel like hair that's been braided, right? And like I said, this is time consuming and there is no faster way to do it. It's not possible to shade braids any other way. You have to shade each individual section of the braid in order to make nice looking braids, all right? Like I said, the biggest thing is to not do this. Don't do this, and don't just shade side to side or all willy-nilly, because you will not end up with hair that looks like hair, okay? The biggest trick and the best trick, like I said, is to just shade it like anything else on your face, is to just look at it and just say, okay, this section is darker. I'm just gonna shade darker. And this is, the next section is lighter. I'm gonna shade lighter. And then it gets a little darker again, right? And just move through your hair that way, okay? Like I said, it's kind of time consuming. Even if you have short hair, hair can be a little time consuming, just because you have to look for all of these little changes in your hair structure to be able to successfully make it look as 3D as it is, okay? Your hair will not be all one color. It will be a lot of different values smushed in together, just because hair has a lot of three-dimensional quality to it. So there you go, hair. Next, clothes. Clothes, if you're like me and you're wearing black, so I'm wearing a black t-shirt and a black sweater, a black t-shirt and gray sweater, I can barely see this down here. I need to ask for a new photo, a photo where the shadows have been blown out and I can see what's down here, okay? It'll make the shadows on my face and my hair super, super bright. I won't be able to see probably my nose anymore, but I will be able to see where the edge of my sweater is and where the edge of my shirt is. So shading your clothes is a lot like shading your hair, in that you want to make sure that you're finishing your portrait really well. So I know that this is it's actually the sweater that I have on today. And it's got these big chunky like ridges all the way along. And I can just barely see those. So you don't want to just quick like shade in your shirt. So even though I'm wearing a black shirt, I don't want to just like, I want to finish my portrait well. I don't want to just phone it in now at the very end because I'm kind of bored of it. I want to make sure that I'm finishing my shirt and my clothing with the same level of detail that I've applied to the rest of my portrait, right? So, which is why, like I said, don't feel bad like to ask for a new photo. And then a lot of times it's about shading the details. So I'm wearing a sweater that's kind of chunky, but it has shadows. So this section is darker. This next section is lighter. This middle part of the sweater part is darker again. So you can see a lot of clothing detail is the same as hair detail in that I'm going to just be looking for where it's lighter and where it's darker, making sure that I keep with the idea that nothing in my portrait will be just a line. Everything is a shadow shape. So there won't be a line at the edge of my t-shirt. There's a value change that happens at the edge of my t-shirt that I need to look for. And then, like I said, just depending on if you're wearing a simple t-shirt like you, that shades pretty fast. You're just looking for shadows in the detail portions of the shirt, and you're looking for shadows like wrinkles, shadow wrinkles. If you're wearing something more complicated, if you have a pattern on your shirt, you can decide to kind of eliminate or simplify that. You just have to make sure that you're just drawing the shadows in the shirt itself instead of all the patterning on your shirt. Okay, so you can see I can hint at that texture that's on my sweater just by shading darker and lighter as I go down the corner. I can just barely see that in the photo that I have. Okay, I know it's a lot of stuff. You can decide, like maybe you're done with your face and your neck and you want to do your clothes first. That's totally fine. If you do that, you'll have a finished section of your portrait at the bottom, and you'll want to make sure that you come and get a piece of drawing paper from the side counter to put under your arm so that you're not dragging your hand across your face. The other option for that is if you finish your clothes first, you can flip your portrait over and flip your photo over, and you can shade your hair upside down. So that way I'm not gonna drag my arm through my finished clothes and face that I've worked so hard to, complete, okay? If you guys have questions today, let me know. Otherwise, like I said, you should be finished with your face and your neck. Moving on to hair and clothes to finish these up with in the next couple of days. Let me know if you have questions.